Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love bold and beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in.
The Bold and the Beautiful has never shied away from shocking the world with storylines that flipped family legacies upside down, but nothing could have prepared Los Angeles for the earthquake that rippled across the Forrester and Spencer circles when Brooke Logan, the eternal queen of scandal, revealed she was unexpectedly pregnant at this stage in her life. For decades, Brooke has been the woman who turned heads, broke hearts, and redefined love triangles into tangled webs of lust and loyalty, but now the whispers swirling around her name are louder than ever, because this isn't just a late-in-life miracle, it's a mystery with potentially devastating consequences for everyone in her orbit. When Brooke made the announcement, her hands trembling as she admitted the truth to Ridge, Hope, and the rest of the Logan clan, the air in the room turned thick with shock. Brooke, who had stood by her daughter Hope through her own pregnancies and losses, who had walked through countless heartbreaks, who thought her days of being at the center of such bombshells were behind her, now stood vulnerable and defiant, cradling a secret that could fracture families in ways even she never intended. The questions began instantly: whose child was she carrying? Was it Ridge's, rekindled during one of their late-night attempts at reconciliation, or was it Bill Spencer's, after one of their fiery, dangerous encounters that never seemed to fully extinguish? Or, to the horror of some, could it even be Deacon Sharp's, the man who has been weaving his way back into her life under the guise of friendship but who has always carried a glimmer of something more when it comes to Brooke? The scandal didn't stop at speculation, it detonated like a grenade across the Forrester offices and Spencer boardrooms, leaving people stunned, betrayed, and in some cases, exhilarated by the chance to see rivals implode. Ridge was floored, torn between wanting to support the woman he's always loved and raging with jealousy at the possibility that she may have lain with another man during their fragile truce. Bill, meanwhile, cloaked in his usual bravado, hinted to Katie that he might have unfinished business with Brooke, but when pressed, he refused to confirm or deny anything. Deacon, on the other hand, practically glowed with suspicion, his quiet smirk and protective gaze fueling rumors that he knew more than he was letting on. For Hope, the revelation was devastating, not only because her mother's reputation was once again under the microscope, but because the identity of the father could shift entire family alliances and drag her, Liam, and even the young Spencer boys into fresh chaos. The Logans tried to rally around Brooke, Donna insisting that it didn't matter how this happened, that Brooke deserved love and joy, while Katie's skepticism cut through like a knife, because Katie, who has loved and lost Bill more times than she can count, saw the storm brewing and knew her sister's choices might once again cost her everything. And in the shadows, Steffi Forrester watched, her lips curling into the kind of smirk that only comes when a rival's empire starts to crumble, because to Steffi, Brooke's pregnancy wasn't just shocking, it was an opportunity, a weapon, a chance to remind everyone that the Logan women were always one bad choice away from imploding. Yet beneath all the gossip, the headlines, the boardroom whispers and the social media speculation tearing through Los Angeles, the most haunting question lingered in the air like perfume: whose child is Brooke really carrying, and how many lives will be destroyed when the truth finally comes out? Because in a city built on beauty, betrayal, and legacy, a single heartbeat inside Brooke Logan might just bring everything crashing down. The fallout from Brooke Logan's pregnancy news spread through Los Angeles like wildfire, igniting conversations in every corner of the city, from the hallowed halls of Forrester Creations to the ruthless boardrooms of Spencer Publications, and even the more modest walls of Il Giardino where gossip travels faster than the wine list. The reactions were as divided as they were intense. Ridge Forrester, a man who has fought for Brooke's love time and time again only to lose her again and again, found himself staring down the very real possibility that this child she carried might not be his, and that possibility shook him to his core. The image of Brooke, vulnerable yet radiant, telling him that she was pregnant had imprinted itself in his mind, but so had the suspicions, the late nights she hadn't answered calls, the faint traces of perfume that weren't his, the times she seemed distracted in his presence. Was Brooke still his Logan, his destiny, or had she once again betrayed him with another man who couldn't resist her allure? The thought that Bill Spencer might be the father gnawed at him, because Ridge knew all too well the kind of dangerous chemistry that existed between his rival and Brooke. Bill had always been drawn to Brooke's strength and vulnerability, that intoxicating combination that made her impossible to resist, and while Ridge despised everything Bill stood for, ruthlessness, arrogance, and an unshakable belief that he could claim whatever woman he wanted, he also knew that Brooke had been tempted by him before. Deacon Sharp's name hovered in the background like a shadow Ridge didn't want to face, because Ridge had never forgiven Brooke for her past with the man who had fathered Hope, a relationship that had cost Ridge more than his pride. If Deacon was the father, Ridge would see it not just as betrayal but as humiliation, a scar on his already battered heart. Meanwhile, Brooke herself wrestled with emotions that tore her apart day and night. On one hand, she felt joy, an almost miraculous sense of renewal, because carrying a child when she had thought those days long behind her felt like a gift from fate. On the other hand, the weight of not knowing, or perhaps not admitting, the identity of the father haunted her every waking hour. She had made mistakes, she knew that, but Brooke Logan was no stranger to mistakes. What made this one so crushing was the sheer scale of its consequences. Every man who could be the father carried with him a different path, a different kind of chaos. If Ridge was the father, perhaps this child could cement their love once and for all, a permanent bond that even Steffi couldn't undermine. If Bill was the father, Brooke would be torn between guilt and temptation, knowing full well that Katie would never forgive her and that her daughter Hope would once again be forced to live under the shadow of her mother's scandals. If Deacon was the father, well, Brooke wasn't even sure she could face the fallout, because Deacon's presence in her life was already controversial enough, and to add a child into the mix would set off a war unlike anything Los Angeles had ever seen. But Brooke wasn't the only one caught in the storm. Hope Logan, ever the dutiful daughter, found herself spiraling as the news sank in. For Hope, her mother's pregnancy dredged up memories of her own struggles, her miscarriages, her fragile attempts to build a family with Liam Spencer, and the endless ways her life had been overshadowed by her mother's choices. She wanted to be supportive, after all, this was her mother, and Brooke had always stood by her, but Hope couldn't silence the dread in her heart. What would happen if Ridge rejected Brooke over this? What if Bill came swaggering in, claiming the child as his, reigniting his toxic hold on Brooke? And what if Deacon, her own father, was revealed to be the man at the center of it all? That thought alone nearly made her collapse, because Hope had worked so hard to rebuild her father's reputation, to give him the chance to prove himself, and if he had crossed that line with her mother, Hope wasn't sure she could forgive him. Liam, for his part, tried to comfort Hope, but his own thoughts drifted to the Spencer legacy. If his father Bill was the father of Brooke's child, that would mean his own stepmother was carrying his sibling, an entanglement so twisted it could rival even the darkest Forrester history. Steffi, ever the opportunist, seized on Hope's distress, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting that perhaps Brooke's scandal would finally topple the Logan influence at Forrester Creations. To Steffi, this wasn't just gossip, it was strategy, because every scandal that touched Brooke ultimately touched Hope, and anything that destabilized Hope's standing gave Steffi more power. Bill Spencer, meanwhile, prowled through his office like a lion guarding a secret. He refused to confirm or deny his involvement to anyone, not even to Katie, who confronted him with icy determination. Katie's voice cracked as she demanded to know if he was responsible, if he had betrayed her again with her sister, but Bill only smirked, dodging the question with the kind of swagger that made Katie want to both slap him and collapse in his arms. Bill enjoyed the speculation, the power of making people sweat, but deep down, he wrestled with his own turmoil. The idea of fathering another child, especially with Brooke, thrilled him and terrified him in equal measure. Bill loved Brooke in his own way, always had, but he also loved Katie, and part of him wondered if, once again, his need to conquer and possess had led him to destroy the very women he claimed to care for. Deacon Sharp, on the other hand, wasn't hiding his feelings. At Il Giardino, he leaned casually against the bar, chatting with customers, but his eyes carried a glint of satisfaction every time someone whispered about Brooke's pregnancy. Deacon didn't confirm anything either, but he didn't need to, his silence spoke volumes. Every smirk, every sly comment about second chances and miracles only fueled the speculation that he had finally claimed the woman he'd wanted for years. Outside the main players, the ripple effects continued to spread. Donna Logan, ever the cheerleader, insisted that this child was a blessing, that Brooke deserved happiness no matter what. She clung to positivity, refusing to let the whispers darken her hope. But Katie remained firm in her skepticism, her heart breaking as she watched her sister once again stand at the center of a love triangle, or, in this case, a love quadrangle, that threatened to destroy the Logan bond. Eric Forrester, the patriarch of the Forrester family, shook his head in both awe and despair. He had seen Brooke through countless scandals, had defended her more times than he could count, but even Eric wasn't sure this time could be smoothed over with forgiveness. To him, the pregnancy raised more than just personal concerns, it raised questions of legacy, inheritance, and the very fabric of the Forrester family tree. Steffi, seizing every opportunity, reminded Eric that the Logan women had always brought chaos into their world, subtly suggesting that maybe it was time to prioritize family stability over Brooke's endless drama. And then there was the public. Brooke Logan was no stranger to headlines, but this story caught like wildfire, dominating fashion blogs, tabloids, and even mainstream media. A woman of Brooke's stature, pregnant at this stage in her life with a mystery father, was the kind of sensationalism the press lived for. Paparazzi hounded her every step, fans speculated online, and the whispers around Forrester Creations turned every business meeting into a session of thinly veiled gossip. Brooke, for all her poise, felt the walls closing in, the pressure mounting as the secret grew harder to contain. She knew the truth would eventually come out, and when it did, Los Angeles would never be the same. Because in this city, secrets don't stay buried, they explode. And Brooke Logan's secret wasn't just a personal one, it was a ticking time bomb that threatened to rip apart families, rivalries, and legacies in ways no one could fully predict. As the days passed, the tension in Los Angeles became almost unbearable, like a storm hovering just beyond the horizon, ready to break at any moment. Ridge found himself pacing the halls of Forrester Creations, replaying every interaction with Brooke over the last few weeks, analyzing her smiles, her touches, her subtle hesitations. He wanted to believe the child was his, to cling to that hope as a lifeline, but the nagging whispers in the back of his mind refused to relent. Every glance he had ever caught between Brooke and Bill, every unexplained absence, every time Deacon's shadow loomed in her presence, it all coalesced into a relentless mental storm. For Ridge, this wasn't just about trust, it was about identity, legacy, and the love he had thought unshakable. To imagine Brooke with another man, carrying his child, felt like a personal betrayal that cut deeper than words could capture. Meanwhile, Brooke herself wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, caught between elation and fear. She loved the idea of new life, of carrying hope into a future that had often seemed so uncertain, but the weight of secrecy pressed down on her like a physical force. Every encounter with Ridge, every conversation with Bill, every casual word from Deacon felt loaded with meaning she wasn't ready to face. Even in moments of quiet solitude, Brooke felt the enormity of her choices pressing in, knowing that once the truth came out, nothing would ever be the same. She was used to scandal, yes, but this one was different. It wasn't about betrayal or passion alone, it was about a life growing inside her, a life that tied multiple families together in ways she could neither control nor predict. Hope, observing her mother from a distance, felt helpless yet compelled to act. She wanted to protect her mother, to shield her from gossip and judgment, but she also wanted answers, clarity, something solid to hold on to in the face of this maelstrom. The tension between mother and daughter grew palpable, threaded with unspoken questions, silent glances, and the knowledge that the identity of the father could either save or shatter them all. Liam, by her side, tried to offer calm, but even he couldn't ignore the storm raging around them. He had seen firsthand how these situations could escalate, and he feared the emotional fallout for everyone he loved. In the background, the city itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. The social elite, the fashion world, and even casual onlookers followed every hint, every rumored glance, every whispered possibility with rapt attention. Brooke Logan, once again, had become the epicenter of a scandal that blurred lines between love, power, and family legacy. And yet, in all this chaos, one thing remained undeniable: whatever happened next would change the lives of everyone involved forever. Because in Los Angeles, secrets have a way of surfacing, lies unravel, and hearts collide, and Brooke Logan's shocking pregnancy, with its unknown father, was the kind of secret that could ignite a firestorm no one could contain. The question on everyone's lips lingered in the air like a heartbeat, heavy and unrelenting: who would claim this child, and who would be left to pick up the pieces when the truth finally came out? As the days stretched into weeks, the weight of the secret Brooke carried pressed harder, its gravity pulling every relationship into orbit around her unborn child. Ridge, unable to sleep at night, spent long hours wandering the Forrester estate, recalling every whispered promise and tender moment, asking himself if this could truly be the end of the love story he thought unbreakable. He remembered the way Brooke had smiled at him over dinner, that soft, knowing glint in her eyes, but he also remembered the unaccounted-for absences, the late nights she hadn't explained, and the shadow of Bill Spencer, whose presence loomed like an uninvited ghost. Deacon, lurking at the edges of Brooke's life with calculated patience, seemed to sense every heartbeat, every glance, every hesitation, his own intentions cloaked in charm but undeniably dangerous. Meanwhile, Bill sat in his office, his mind a storm of desire, strategy, and unpredictability, delighting in the suspense, yet secretly wondering if he'd finally gone too far, if the consequences of this child might entangle him in a web from which even his power and wealth could not free him. Brooke herself felt stretched thin, caught between elation and fear, between the joy of new life and the dread of its potential to destroy everything she had fought to build. Every conversation, every casual word, every glance from Ridge, Bill, or Deacon carried meaning far beyond what anyone could understand. The weight of expectation, judgment, and speculation sat on her chest, yet she also felt an undeniable sense of purpose. This child represented something pure, something untouched by the chaos that had long defined her life, a reminder that even in the midst of scandal, life finds a way to demand attention, respect, and love. Hope watched her mother with a mixture of awe, frustration, and concern, understanding more than Brooke realized about the delicate balance of secrets and consequences. Liam stayed close to Hope, offering reassurance, but he too could feel the tension cracking through the walls of their world, the kind of tension that promises upheaval with every heartbeat. Even Los Angeles itself seemed to hold its breath, the city alive with whispers, gossip, and speculation. Fashion insiders, socialites, journalists, and casual observers alike found themselves caught in the whirlwind of Brooke Logan's story, each rumor and each speculation a thread weaving a tapestry of intrigue, scandal, and suspense. Every glance Brooke gave Ridge, every conversation she had with Bill, every quiet smile exchanged with Deacon seemed to hint at answers no one yet dared speak aloud. And yet, beneath the chaos, one truth remained unshakable: this child, no matter who the father might be, would change the landscape of every family involved, tying together rivalries, loves, and betrayals in ways impossible to untangle. In the end, as Brooke sat quietly in the Logan living room, a hand resting protectively on the swell of her belly, she knew that the world outside could speculate, judge, and even despise, but inside, she carried something sacred, fragile, and powerful. The mystery of the father, whether Ridge, Bill, Deacon, or someone else entirely, would one day be revealed, and when that day came, Los Angeles would never be the same. Every glance, every whispered word, every racing heartbeat hinted at the chaos to come, a storm that promised heartbreak, revelation, and possibly redemption. And as Brooke breathed deeply, feeling the first flutter of life inside her, she allowed herself a moment of hope, a single, fleeting thought that maybe, just maybe, this child could bring love where there had only ever been conflict, a future where families might survive, and secrets might finally be confronted. Because in Los Angeles, in the tangled web of the Forresters and Spencers, nothing stays hidden forever, and Brooke Logan's shocking pregnancy, with its unknown father, was the spark that would set the city ablaze.